welcome to American Stories. I'm Saida Pagan. Our guest today is Esmeralda Santiago, who is possibly the most celebrated author on the topic of the Puerto Rican experience, both on the mainland and on the island. She's written several books and other works, beginning with her award-winning memoir, When I Was Puerto Rican. It was published more than 30 years ago, and to commemorate the event, new editions of Esmeralda's books are being re-released, relaunched in the summer of 2024. Welcome to our program, Esmeralda.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here.
And it's really an honor to have you on our program as well. I'd like to talk, of course, about your memoirs and about your books, but let's begin with the thought process and the planning that went into putting together these new editions of your memoirs.
The publisher was very excited about the idea of commemorating the fact that it had been 30 years since the first book was published. And so my new editor had the great idea of having some prominent writers from the Latine community to write prologues about the books, because they had all had and somehow read it when they were in high school or in college, and some of them continue to teach them in college campuses. So there are four writers who have included prologues for each of the books. So when I Was Puerto Rican has a prologue by Jaquira Diaz and Julia Alvarez. Almost a Woman, my second memoir, has a prologue by Lilian Rivera, who writes mostly for young adults, but also for adults. And The Turkish Lover has a prologue by Francisco Goldman, who is one of my most beloved Latine writers.
That's wonderful. Your work has always had appeal, of course, to people of Puerto Rican ancestry, such as myself, as well as other Latinos, but actually it has broader appeal. Why do you think that is the case?
I think the reason, especially my memoirs, really connect to people outside of my culture and outside of my history, because they're very specific to a particular time, a particular place, and they have universal lives. And When I Was Puerto Rican, I write from the perspective of a little girl trying to make sense of her world. And we've all been there. So I get many, many emails and comments from people from other countries, other language groups, telling me that even though I am not Puerto Rican, I connected to this experience. And I think that really highlights my work. Is I really try to connect our experience as Puerto Ricans on the island and away with other people who have had similar experiences in their lives. And so I think that's why they've lasted so long, because you can read Almost a Woman about an adolescent girl struggling with language, climate, history, societal expectations. As a teenager, what we're like at that time. We just want to be part of other teenagers. We want to be like everybody else. But when you're in this country or in any foreign country, coming from another place, it's really hard to find yourself in this place. And so Almost a Woman really speaks to that, and to the struggles and the questions that we have. And of course, The Turkish Lover is about a love affair that I had with a man from whom I both learned a lot and also who held me back a lot. So it's about that struggle that we have with our first love that we encounter in our lives, and how to find ourselves in an intense relationship like that, and then make a decision about, who am I with or without this person. So they're all very specific to experiences that we've all had at various ages, and it just seems to connect to people with them and reminds them perhaps of um, same experiences for themselves or of somebody that they love, and that's thrilling to me.
Absolutely. Let's talk first about When I Was Puerto Rican. I mean, that title has always made me chuckle, When I Was Puerto Rican. Let's delve into the plot in that. Well, not it's not a plot, but what you write about in your that memoir.
Okay. Well, When I Was Puerto Rican covers the first 14 years of my life. I was born and raised in Puerto Rico until I was 13 years old. And then at that point, my parents split up, and my mom brought me and my 6 siblings to the United States, to Brooklyn. So we go from this very rural community in Toa Baja, about 45 minutes from San Juan, from the capital. And we are in the midst of Brooklyn, which I'm still shocked. I mean, overnight, really, everything changed for us. New environment, new language, new climate. We lived in very humble beginnings in a barrio full of people like us, and all of a sudden we're in high buildings, having to go upstairs and things that were not familiar to us. So that book is about this young woman that I was, this young girl that I was, trying to make sense of who she was in Puerto Rico and who she becomes in the United States. And one of the reasons the title is in the past tense is because until Hurricane Maria made it impossible for the people of the archipelago of Puerto Rico to continue their lives the way they'd had it, the life that I had in Puerto Rico had really become something sort of a legacy, because most people didn't live like that. There was electricity, there was television, there were cars, the houses were made of cement mostly. So When I Was Puerto Rican is about a Puerto Rico that no longer existed until Hurricane Maria changed things dramatically. And also because when I went back to Puerto Rico after approximately 12 years being in the United States, a lot of the people who had never left Puerto Rico said that I was no longer Puerto Rican because the way I dressed was different. My Spanish had pretty much not evolved to the same level as other people of my age who had gone through university in Puerto Rico. So my Spanish is kind of more cursory than my English, and so that was very, very life-changing for me when I heard that in Puerto Rico, that other people didn't consider me Puerto Rican enough. And so When I Was Puerto Rican is a response to that statement. And then finally, I just think that we need to have a discussion in Puerto Rico and in the United States about this sense that if we don't live there, we're not Puerto Rican enough. And so I wanted to get a discussion and people to talk about it. The fact is, and the truth is, that the same people that I knew in Puerto Rico until 1961, they have evolved very, very much so, but they're not aware how different they are. And so I just wanted them to discuss, what is this thing with the degrees of Puerto Ricanness that no one can define. They can only blame somebody for not having whatever the degree is that they feel is the appropriate one.
Yes, I can relate to that. I remember doing an interview not long ago with a person who was Latino but not Puerto Rican, who was working with a Puerto Rican actor. And he was saying, I told him I'm Puerto Rican because I grew up in New York. You were Puerto Rican. I have a last name. My last name is Pagan, but it's really Rodriguez. Okay. And he goes, well, this actor is real Puerto Rican. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to argue with you. But for those of us who grew up in New York, we know that no matter what, you were considered Puerto Rican, if you were
Yeah.
that culture.
Well, I think
So,
that there's something about there's some there's a certain arrogance to people who find it easy to determine somebody else's cultural identity. It's like they make that decision. I don't place myself in a scale of Puerto Ricanness. I am Puerto Rican because I'm Puerto Rican. But I think there is a certain arrogance to that when people say that, because it's a way, I think, to make themselves greater in some way, and I think it's destructive. I think it's very emotionally aggressive to do that to somebody, especially when you do it to a young person whose identity is still being formed by their experiences, whether it's in Puerto Rico or elsewhere. I mean, a lot of Puerto Ricanos have been born. I mean, I have nieces and nephews that have been born in foreign countries because their parents were in the service in the United military. So, they were born in Germany or they were born in Japan. They're no less Puerto Rican, you know, yet, you
no,
know, there's an issue for not them. There's an issue for the person looking at them and making a determination that is a bias and a prejudice that has nothing to do with their reality.
absolutely. Let's talk about Almost a Woman. And I enjoyed that film so much, as well as the book. So let's talk about the ideas with Almost a Woman.
Almost a Woman covers the years between I'm about 15, 14 or 15 until I'm about 20, 21. And that is when I really, I'm in the United States with my family, living in Brooklyn, and I get accepted into Performing Arts High School in Manhattan. And so my life completely alters because now, unlike my siblings and my mother and almost all my other relatives around me, I'm going into Manhattan every day. So I'm seeing a different world from the one that we live in. It's not, no longer am I in the middle of a Puerto Rican neighborhood, but I'm actually out there in the middle of Midtown, actually Manhattan. And so this book really covers those years of my learning English, how I learned English, how I became comfortable living in New York, while still longing, yearning for Puerto Rico, and also trying to make sense of who who am I? Who am I going to become? Who do I want to be? So those were those years that was kind of all those questions were just kind of bubbling under the surface at the same time as I'm going through this very dramatic and traumatic experience of having migrated from Puerto Rico to New York City.
Yeah, and I've talked to you about this. I am looking for more movies, more videos from you. What is the status of that? Will you be making more in the future?
Well, my husband made a documentary about me and about my journey as a writer, which we're right now kind of updating it because he made this in the late 90s. My husband's a filmmaker, so am I. So that film is probably going to be re-released perhaps next year or the year after. So in terms of that, and then a film has been made of America's Dream, my first novel. And it's directed by Sonia Fritz, a very well-respected, well-known filmmaker in Puerto Rico, and produced by Edward James Olmos, whose wife stars in the film. So it's all full of people who really were committed to this story, and that film is, I believe it's available for anyone who would like to look at it. It's called America, actually, and it did screen Almost a Woman. Both of them were screened on PBS and in limited theatrical release.
And is there any way to see them again?
Well, Almost a Woman is still kind of in a limbo right now because the production company, the people who were involved in the production company are no longer, they're retired, and one of them passed away. And then the distributor was Paramount, and Paramount has also been broken up. So we're in the process right now of trying to understand who's got, who has the rights, and I would love to be able to make it available for my readers and anyone who would like to look at it.
Now, America's Dream also is like a little bit of a play on words. Tell us a little bit about what what it deals with.
So America's Dream is about a woman who lives in Vieques, who is in fact named America. And she's involved in a violent relationship with her husband. And she just arrives at a point where she can't stand this anymore. And she gets an opportunity to move to the United States to work for a well-to-do family who hired her to be the nanny for their children. And it's about, a similar situation that I was in, but this time the character is actually more mature. She has a child who's also kind of floundering, and it's about her experiences in the United States from the perspective of a minimally English speaker, but with great skills with children, with uh, taking care of her own life. And so that book and that novel follows this woman's dreams and aspirations from the beginning to the end, and the negotiation that we must go through when we are going from one culture to another, or one society to another language group to another. We really end up compromising a lot in different ways. And so she's faced with a lot of that. And hopefully uh, people connect to that. And in fact, they've told me that they have found many points of connection between themselves and America.
Now, Conquistadora goes back in time, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it begins in 1844.
And so tell us what that one is about, that book.
So Conquistadora is about an Española who is from Sevilla, who comes across documents from a long ago ancestor who had been among the original conquistadores with Ponce de Leon. And she is an educated society young woman who did not respect the society that was imposing on her dreams and ambitions. And so she decided she wants to be a conquistadora, and she's going to go to Puerto Rico no matter what. And so she manages to convince these two young men, one of whom she marries, to go to Puerto Rico, where they have inherited an hacienda. And she convinces them, we should go there, and we will make it great. It's going to be a great hacienda because we can work on this. And so they do come without really much of a sense of what that involves. So Conquistadora is about Anna trying again. My journey was from Puerto Rico to the United States. Her journey was from Spain to Puerto Rico. And so I always consider that where somebody is trying to become Puerto Rican, and you have to go, you go through the same kinds of things. And of course, at that time, life was very different. Her situations were very different. Her expectations of her life were very different. And of course, she never, ever expected that her life would find itself in the midst of an enslaved population that she now was in charge of. So all these things were part of a lot of the research that I did in the process of coming up with this story. And I hear from my readers that they both love and hate her. They love her ambition, and las ganas that she has to achieve the things that she has. But she's enslaving people, How do you justify it? So I think it's a very complicated book, and it's a complicated situation to be in and to live. And I did my best to make sure to have the reader have a journey through this experience, and then ultimately make their own determination of what would it been, what would it have been like if I were you? How would I have done this? Would I have done it differently or not? I think that that's one of the questions that we always ask when we read historical fiction is, you just wonder, would I have done that the same way?
Very interesting, and an important part of the history of Puerto Rico that you're touching upon that a lot of people are not aware of. Let's talk a little bit about Las Madres, because that is about what happens. It's fictional
Yeah.
about what might have happened in under the situation that happened with Hurricane Maria. So, how did you go about researching that and telling that story?
Well, it was 2017 on my daughter's birthday. The hurricane enters Puerto Rico through Humacao and Naguabo. And I was in the United States. I was actually here in this very room. And I start watching what's going on about this hurricane on its way to Puerto Rico. And the minute that I saw an image of, you see the hurricane, it's enormous. You just think, oh my God, this is horrible. And you start worrying about all the people that you love and know in Puerto Rico. I have many cousins. Just had a lot of dear friends. So I was really panicking, I have to say. But there was a certain moment when I saw an image from one of the networks that showed Puerto Rico was black. All the lights had gone out everywhere. And so you no longer see the island from the sky. And I realized, oh my goodness, we know a lot more about what's going on than the people there, what's going on. And so I think the semillita for writing about it came from that experience of being in the United States, completely helpless. I can't do anything to help anyone except call them and say, please stay safe, please take care of yourselves, go to a shelter, all the things that we all did to our loved ones during that time. But also realizing that this would be a life-changing experience for millions of people, in the archipelago, and then those of us here. My dad, who passed away when he was 94, he still remembered what happened during San Felipe II in 1928 when he was a little boy. And the fact that at 94, he was still traumatized by that experience told me that Maria is going to affect several generations, even if some of them were born after it, because their parents and their grandparents experienced it here or there. So I think I began to think about, I really need to write about this. I write in English. I know there's a wonderful, wonderful literature in Puerto Rico written in Spanish. And I felt like there's a lot of people here who can't read in Spanish, but they need to know about what happened. And so that's why Las Madres really emerges from my desire to make sure that nobody forget what happens on September 20th, 2017. And so, it began with that idea that it should not be forgotten. And so I did a lot of research because I wasn't there. I talked to a lot of people who had been in the middle of it. I read a lot of um, posts on social media that people did until the moment that the hurricane cuts all communication. And then afterwards, some people wrote about the aftermath and what they were going through. And then I went there and I saw what had happened because it was still happening. So I did as much as I could to make it alive for a reader, and to let them know that this is big. It's not just una llovizna, It wasn't just un temporal. It was a ciclón, and I really wanted to make sure that people would know, and would not forget.
You have done such remarkable work in writing about the experiences of Puerto Ricans in particular in the 20th century, 21st century. And so many people would like to support what you're doing in many ways. We have talked in the past, Esmeralda, about how readers who are longing for this kind of work, to read these kinds of books, what can they do? Let's talk about what readers can do to support writers such as yourself.
Okay, thank you for for mentioning this. Um, we are I write for you. I write for my readers. I write for my gente, mi gente. So it's not only it's an artistic endeavor for me, but it's very personal for me because I was born in that place. I was raised in that place until I was 13. I understand a lot about what's going on in Puerto Rico and what went on then, because whatever I did not know, I have read about. I've read the history. So for me, it's a love. It's a work of love for my readers. For my publishers, they love the books, otherwise they wouldn't publish them. But for them, I'm a product for them as well. And so the best thing that our people can do for our writers and actually for our artists of any kind is to take sus chavitos and buy our books. It's really, like right now, just this very day, I'm writing a proposal for my next book. And one of the things that happens when you send in an idea to a publishing house is one of the first things that they do is check to see how your books have sold in the past, right? And if the numbers don't look good to them, you may not get the opportunity to be published by a major publisher particular. So I think it's a numbers game that most of us who are in this work, we don't think about very much. We don't think it's part of what we do, but in fact it is. And our readers, if you love our work, please buy our books, even if you don't get to read it right away.
Well, Esmeralda, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for all that you do, the wonderful work that you've done throughout your life to bring some of these ideas to life and to let people know more about the Puerto Rican experience.